They said I was dead, buried, forgotten. But I came back, reborn, stronger, and with one goal: revenge. He promised me the throne, yet he betrayed me. This time, nothing will stop me. My funeral was conducted with the highest honors. After all, I was Zhao Jing's first wife. I had served as empress for 4 years, presiding over the realm with dignity, keeping to my duties, never once making a serious mistake. Even later, when he favored Consort Chen and his relationship with the Empress Dowager grew strained, it was I who mediated between them. When Consort Chen fell ill, he stayed by her bedside for 3 straight days and nights, never once removing his robes, barely taking a sip of water. When it came to me, there was no pain on his face. He only held my hand as it slowly grew cold and sat there for a long while. "If there is another life," he said, "I will still grant you the position of empress." And I really did make it to another life. At that time, Zhao Jing had not yet met the great love of his life. He decided to let the empress choose a virtuous, noble lady to become his princess consort. The empress pointed to me. Just as he looked over, her fingers shifted an inch to the side, choosing someone else. "Let's choose the second Miss Li instead."
1.
The moment I met Zhao Jing's gaze, I hurriedly looked away. Seated above was Zhao Jing, the Prince of Wei, 18 years old. He wore magnificent robes, his face as flawless as carved jade, yet his expression was distant and aloof, as though he had nothing to do with what was happening around him. He had reached the age for marriage discussions. With no woman he loved, he left everything to the Empress's arrangement. In this life, the Empress had also come to ask me once. I declined politely. So the Empress sighed with a hint of regret. After a brief pause, her finger moved gently to the next name. Li Shuanghua. "Let's choose the second Miss Li instead." Li Shuanghua rose gladly, knelt, and thanked her for the favor. Zhao Jing lifted his eyelids slightly. His cool, indifferent gaze lingered on her for just a moment. The same way he once looked at me. There was no admiration, no dissatisfaction, only an expression of good enough, as he accepted the decision. Following protocol, the Empress casually asked, "Does the Prince of Wei have any objections?" He paused briefly.
No.
If she wasn't the woman he loved, then it didn't matter who it was.
2.
As I stepped out of the hall, a fine drizzle fell softly. Rainwater pooled on the ground, reflecting hazy silhouettes. I lifted the edge of my umbrella slightly and met the eyes of my 15-year-old self in the reflection. For a moment, it felt as though lifetimes had passed. Zhao Jing's word was final. Once he agreed to the marriage, it could not be changed. I would never again die of illness within the palace walls. I remember very clearly the day I died. People came in waves, one after another. Court officials knelt outside the hall. Noble women knelt inside. Only Consort Chen did not come. She was delicate and weak, afraid of catching lingering illness. Zhao Jing sat by my side, holding my slightly cold hand. His silk sleeve covered the back of my hand, soft and warm. My eyelids drooped as I struggled to recall the matters I still needed to entrust to him. "If you are to establish a new empress," I said softly, "please choose noble Consort Li. She is calm and dignified. She will never make things difficult for Consort Chen." I had my own selfish reasons. First, although Li Shuanghua and I had competed for many years, I admired her. Her lifelong wish was to stand above tens of thousands, and I was willing to place her in that highest position. Second, deep down, I hated both Consort Chen and Zhao Jing. She entered the palace as a commoner. Without bearing a son, she was still granted the title of consort. The court and the realm were thrown into an uproar. Officials submitted memorials urging restraint. My father's secret letter was even delivered into my hands. It was the end of the year. The affairs of the inner palace were overwhelming, and I was heavily pregnant. Bound by my responsibilities, I had no choice but to go and persuade Zhao Jing. Outside the hall, wind and snow filled the sky. He agreed to see only me, and only because of the child in my womb. Inside, it was warm as spring, Yet his expression was icy. He sat high above, eyes lowered, and said only 2 sentences to me. Empress, even you have come to pressure me. You have lived deep in the palace for too long.
You don't understand.
It is rare for me to meet someone to whom I am willing to entrust my true feelings. I froze, gripping my sleeve tightly in humiliation. True feelings? In truth, I had them too. When I married Zhao Jing, I had just passed my 16th birthday. When the red bridal veil was lifted, I crashed straight into those calm, bright eyes, and ripples quietly spread through my heart. Later, I was his princess of Wei for 3 years, and then his empress for 3 more. We treated each other with mutual respect, like honored guests. I thought that, at the very least, there was affection between us. I was so heartbroken that I didn't notice I had tracked bits of melting snow on my shoes. Now it had melted, leaving the floor damp. As I took my leave, I slipped at the palace gate. With no choice, I was confined to bed to stabilize the pregnancy. That fall made Zhao Jing withdraw his decree for the first time. The young girl failed to be named consort. Unable to contain her anger, she lashed out with harsh words. So this is the empress. I had heard long ago of her virtuous reputation and thought to pay my respects. I never imagined that just to stop me from becoming a consort, she would even use her legitimate son as leverage. Such tactics are truly despicable. She should never have struck at my deepest wound. Dragging my sick body, I summoned her and ordered that she be slapped 20 times. With her face swollen and red, she ran out crying. When Zhao Jing heard of it, he flew into a rage. To back her up, he issued a decree naming her consort Chen, ensuring that I could no longer act against her so easily. From then on, consort Chen and I became enemies. But I had never intended to make things difficult for her. She had insulted me first. If I did not punish her, it would be impossible to command respect in the future. I explained everything to Zhao Jing. After listening, he only smiled casually, a trace of mockery in his smile. If you wanted to establish authority, he said, you could have just announced that punishment had already been carried out. Why did you have to actually hit her? My heart shrank abruptly. And suddenly I realized, the man before me was not only the emperor. He could also be someone else's support. And for the sake of someone else, he could put me in an impossible position. 3. Later, consort Chen monopolized all of Zhao Jing's favor. Every other consort had to avoid her edge and yield to her dominance. I had no choice. The weight of constant worry pressed on me. I often thought of those empresses who, once fallen out of favor, were deposed and discarded. Zhao Jing was no puppet. He was the son of heaven, lord of 10,000 chariots, with absolute power over life and death. When I made things difficult for consort Chen, he warned me. If one day I were to block her path, I didn't dare imagine how I would end. A knot formed in my heart, and day by day, I sank into decline. When I was 7 months pregnant, consort Chen provoked me once again. She held her beloved dog in her arms and said, out of nowhere, Your Majesty, the same trick only works once. I frowned and ordered someone to take her away, refusing to see her. But it was already too late. The dog suddenly went mad, barking wildly as it lunged at me. Someone threw themselves in front of me, yet I was still badly startled and fell to the ground. By the time Zhao Jing arrived, noble consort Li had already ordered her men to take consort Chen away. Consort Chen cried so hard her tears fell like pear blossoms in the rain. Her pale wrist was bruised purple and blue where someone had grabbed her. Sobbing, she said, I don't even know what happened. The moment the empress saw me, she fell backward, and then she had my dog beaten to death. Zhao Jing helped her up, then came toward me in a rage, convinced that I had once again used my child to frame her. When he arrived, all he saw were palace servants carrying basins of bloodied water out one after another. I went into premature labor. The child lived only half a day. There was no time even to give the baby a name. I was unconscious for 3 days. Zhao Jing stayed by my side for 2 of them. At death's door, I heard him speaking close to my ear. It was my fault. I was wrong about her. As long as you wake up, she will be at your disposal. In the end, I survived. After I woke, I dismissed the attendants, took up a knife, and went to find Consort Chen. By April, the weather was no longer cold. Yet I was shaking all over, so cold I could barely hold the hilt of the blade.
The guards did not dare stop me.
Consort Chen collapsed onto the ground. Even her headdress had fallen off, her face filled with terror.
Just a few stabs, I thought.
And she could pay for my child's life. That blade never struck. An arrow tore through the air from afar and pierced straight through my hand. The bow was in Zhao Jing's grasp. When Consort Chen saw him, she scrambled to her feet and kicked me hard in the knee. She threw herself into his arms, carrying all the grievance of a narrow escape from death. Zhao Jing pushed her away and gathered me into his arms. "Youning," he said softly, "I know you are in pain, but her crime does not warrant death." I had no strength left. Like duckweed without roots, I drifted lightly into his embrace. Tears burst forth like a breached riverbank, pouring endlessly down my cheeks. 4. Consort Chen was confined to her quarters, forbidden to leave without an imperial summons. It was Zhao Jing who was protecting her. Even my arsenic could not be delivered. I knew I would not live much longer, so I arranged my final affairs. Everything that needed to be said had already been said. To Zhao Jing, there was only one sentence left. Establish noble consort Li as the new empress. After hearing it, he agreed. With his fingertips, he gently brushed aside the strand of hair clinging to my cheek. A flicker of confusion and pain passed through his eyes. He gazed at me in silence for a long time before finally speaking. "And what about me?" he asked. "Is there not a single word meant for me?" His voice was unexpectedly hoarse. What was there left for me to say to him? He possessed all under heaven, and his beloved was by his side. I wanted to say that I hated him, but I couldn't. I was about to die. Those still living would have to continue honoring him as their sovereign. I curved my lips into a faint smile, my face deathly pale, and said softly, "Then I wish your majesty enduring national fortune and 10,000 years without worry." His hand suddenly tightened around mine. Zhao Jing lowered his head, resting his forehead against mine, his body trembling slightly. "If there is another life," he said, "I will still grant you the position of empress." A burning hot tear fell onto the center of my brow. My thoughts were already growing hazy. Drowsily, I thought, if there really is another life, I don't want to be his empress anymore. I died in his arms. He held my icy hand, unable to warm it no matter what he did. The rain that day was just like it is now, drifting and swaying, soaking my cheeks.
5.
I wiped the moisture from my face and let out a very soft sigh. The empress was supposed to have a senior palace matron escort me out of the palace. After waiting a long time with no one coming, I turned back to look. The palace doors were tightly shut. Under the eaves stood a man, holding an unopened umbrella. Through the curtain-like rain, he looked at me. It was Zhao Jing. I remembered that before the marriage decree was issued, the empress had already tried to match us. I had pursued him for a time, riding horses and hunting with him, drinking wine at winding streams during banquets. His attitude toward me had always been lukewarm, neither warm nor cold. Not until after the marriage was granted. Only then did he smile at me, as if resigned, as if compromising. "Spending a lifetime with you doesn't seem so bad." I stepped back subtly, lowered my eyes, and bowed. "Greetings, Your Highness." He walked toward me step by step. Through the mist of rain, even his brows and eyes seemed damp, inexplicably tinged with loneliness. "Why wasn't it you?" he asked. It seemed to be nothing more than genuine confusion. Between Li Shuanghua and me, the empress had favored me more, and I had also set my heart on him. I froze.
Everyone around us had been dismissed.
When he didn't receive an answer, he lowered his head to look at me. The young Zhao Jing had always been a man of few words, distant toward others. As if struggling to speak, he hesitated and asked again, "Why wasn't it you? When clearly my mother first chose you."
6.
It was hard for me to answer. I couldn't say how he had treated me so coldly in my previous life, leaving me heartbroken to the core, nor could I say that the hatred I carried into this life had not faded, that I not only didn't want to marry him, but even wished him dead. I pressed my lips together. "Because Your Highness does not care for me," I said. "Spending the rest of one's life facing someone who doesn't love you would be unbearably dull and painful." Those were words he himself had once said. He said Consort Chen was special, the one he loved in his heart. So I kept retreating step by step. To maintain surface-level peace, I even went personally to persuade the Empress Dowager. I didn't make him spend the latter half of his life resenting me either. I died early. So early that my mother's hair had not yet turned white when she had to come to the palace gates to see my coffin off. The history books praised me in careful brushstrokes for my virtue, while harshly condemning Consort Chen. But when I think about it, a good reputation is useless. Wealth and power vanish into smoke after death. All that remains is grief for those who love you, and satisfaction for those who hate you. This time, I want to live well. Zhao Jing fell silent for a moment. His hand tightened around the umbrella handle, his knuckles paling slightly. Then if I were to say, heavy raindrops fell, striking the edge of the umbrella. "Your Highness," I interrupted softly, "the rain is getting heavier. If I don't leave now, the road will be hard to walk." Behind him, the palace doors opened. A matron came out at just the right moment, holding an umbrella, smiling as she approached. "Your Highness, Her Majesty and the second Miss Li are waiting for you inside." She then turned to me. Seeing that I had an umbrella, she handed me a handkerchief instead, reminding me to wipe off the rain that had splashed onto me. I thanked her and accepted it. Zhao Jing's words had been cut short, and he didn't continue. His gaze lingered on me briefly before he withdrew it, turning and stepping back into the hall. As the doors closed partway, the sounds of laughter from the Empress and Li Shuanghua spilled out. Zhao Jing was mentioned as well. He let out a soft laugh and responded with a couple of words. The matron led me out of the palace. The palace road was long. Only nobles of high rank were allowed to ride in sedan chairs. After walking for some time, my shoes and stockings were splashed wet, and I couldn't help but look a bit bedraggled. As the matron helped me into the carriage, she suddenly sighed, her tone meaningful. "Miss, you're being foolish. The Prince of Wei clearly has feelings for you." This servant saw it all. Feelings? It was just that I had changed so abruptly that he wasn't used to it. Still, I knew the matron meant well. Everyone knew that the Empress had no biological sons, yet she favored both the Prince of Wei and the Prince of Qi. With the Crown Prince not yet established, the Prince of Wei, being the elder, had better odds. I lifted the carriage curtain with my fingers and smiled at her gently. My intentions don't lie there. 7. I returned to the residence early. No one needed to ask. Everyone already understood. How could they not have chosen me? My grandfather stood at the pinnacle of court power. My father was a trusted confidant of the emperor. My talent and appearance were beyond reproach. How could Li Shuanghua have surpassed me? My mother held my hand and spoke hesitantly, telling me not to be too heartbroken. There are so many fine men in the world. Marrying into a noble family would still be good. I shook my head and said that I had declined of my own accord. I spoke softly. I don't want to marry into royalty. I only need someone with good character. If there isn't such a person, then not marrying is fine too. My mother was stunned. She never imagined that a daughter raised in a prestigious, wealthy Pei family would have such a temperament. She didn't know. I had once been empress, had my name written into the history books, and yet I hadn't lived well at all. But I think she would have understood. After I died, my mother cried until her voice was gone, joining forces with titled noblewomen to demand the execution of Consort Chen. My father removed his official hat and knelt for days without rising, demanding an explanation from Zhao Jing. And yet I had clearly left a letter, telling them to protect themselves, not to seek justice for me. Thinking of this, I lowered my head, my throat suddenly tightening. Seeing my reddened eyes, my mother panicked. She patted the back of my hand, her tone softening. All right. I felt an immense sense of relief.
8.
In the blink of an eye, 5 days passed. For reasons unknown, the imperial decree granting marriage to the Prince of Wei had still not been announced. The hopes of the various noble families stirred once again. I saw Zhao Jing again at the flower festival. Spring was at its height. Flowers bloomed in competition, the perfect time for an outing.
It was a sunny day.
The sunlight fell warmly, letting me briefly forget the damp chill of the cunning palace from my past life. I sat by a bed of flowers with the women of various households, cutting ribbons and colorful paper to tie onto the branches. Li Shuanghua suggested writing wishes on paper. Not far away, a gathering of scholars was underway, drinking wine and composing poetry. Third Miss Lu kept glancing in that direction, her cheeks flushed. Everyone knew her fiancé was over there, so they teased her, urging her to go borrow some writing tools. She returned with them, followed by an attendant. I recognized him. He often followed Zhao Jing. The attendant carried a red sandalwood tray, his posture respectful, his smile ingratiating. On the tray were brush, ink, paper, and inkstone. This is a gift from His Highness to second Miss Pei. Such a distinction made everyone turn to look. I, however, froze in place. The tray felt scorching hot. Awkward whether I accepted it or not. This had not happened in my previous life. Soft laughter rose from around us. No wonder the Prince of Wei hasn't settled on the marriage. Turns out he's dissatisfied with Li II. Li Shuanghua stood up, casting a cold glance at the crowd. Silence fell all around. She gave a muffled flick of her sleeve and left. I accepted the tray, set it down gently, and left behind a single sentence. The second Miss Li has won the Empress's favor and attends her closely. How could she be compared to people like us?
She walked too fast.
I had to jog to catch up. I didn't know how to comfort her. I could only murmur at her side, telling her she was already very good and didn't need to listen to others. In my previous life, when I was weighed down by sorrow, it was she who had comforted me. But everyone has their own aspirations. It's hard to truly empathize. She couldn't ease my heart back then, and I couldn't truly console her now. After walking for a while, she let out a heavy breath and pulled me back. Forget it. If I hide, it'll just look like they hit a sore spot. I cut the colored paper. She wrote a few words, praying to the flower goddess. I wrote one too, borrowing her brush and ink. As noon approached, the crowd gradually dispersed. Zhao Jing walked over this way, stopping near the brilliant flowering trees. He was tall. At a glance, he saw my paper ribbon, tilted his head slightly, and read it aloud softly. Revisiting familiar gardens, rejoicing in windless, rainless days, spring birds bring tidings of peace. He froze. Is that all you wish for? I didn't look at him.
Yes.
Just that wish alone was already precious. In my unbearable past life, all that fell upon me were bitter winds and harsh rain. Even before I died. It was clearly a season of gentle spring rain, yet I feared the cold, feared the damp. My unhealed wounds ached terribly. Night after night, I lay awake with reddened eyes, listening to rain strike banana leaves, thinking about my own end. I had done nothing wrong, and yet I still ended up like that. The same scenery, once Zhao Jing was added to it, would turn into a terrible memory. Zhao Jing casually picked up another ribbon and glanced at it briefly. Love, wealth, beauty. Do you ask for none of these? I didn't answer. The wind brushed through the treetops. Ribbons and streamers swayed together, spring light rippling. I brushed aside a ribbon that had stuck to my forehead. His breathing grew slightly unsteady. Finding it dull himself, he looked away. The tray had been set aside. The items he had sent were neatly arranged, untouched. Zhao Jing's gaze darkened. It seemed he finally understood that I was avoiding him at all costs. Sometimes, the paths we choose reveal more about who we are than the destinies laid out before us. What happens next is a turning point, one that tests courage, cunning, and the weight of vengeance.
9.
I had more urgent matters to attend to. After the flower festival, news I had long sought finally reached me. I found the former consort Chen in a dilapidated temple on the outskirts of the city. Deep in the stillness of night, I wore a veil, clenching my teeth, the taste of blood sharp on my lips. My maid Shuyun bound the young woman before me, who was unconscious. She said, "We've checked her household registration and name. This is the person you were looking for." She didn't ask why I held a grudge against someone I had never met, nor did she question my intention to end her life. She only knew my hatred was absolute. If I did not act, I would never be at peace. A sharp dagger was handed to me. I stared at the familiar face before me, daring not to think, daring not to hesitate, and drove the blade into her heart. Blood spurted onto my face, scalding hot. I sank to the ground in a daze, pressing a cloth to my face. The broken Buddha statue stood solemnly, as if taking everything into its gaze. The night wind blew, scattering red petals, turning them into spring mud. I remembered the child who had only glimpsed the world for a moment. She had no name. Consort Chen had said she died young, unknown to the world. She had gone into the tomb, like falling flowers carried away by spring. At that time, I had been unconscious. I never saw her final moment. I gripped the broken incense burner at my side, so tightly my nails dug into it. My chest ached as though in someone else's hand. My breathing was uneven, and my sobs came in short, stifled bursts. Shuyun froze, then lightly patted my back. I stayed there through the night until dawn. I confirmed that my old life rival had no pulse, her body stiff. The first task was done. Shuyun handled the body for me, and I wearily stepped out of the ruined temple. Sunlight pierced through the thick mist, slanting across the ground. And I saw clearly. A figure stood in the fog. Slender, tall, like pine and cypress, dressed plainly and thus unremarkable. I recognized him. But at this moment he did not recognize me. And he had witnessed me commit murder.
10.
In my past life, Zhao Jing often mentioned a man. That year's palace examination top scholar, Lu Chenyuan. Zhao Jing admired his talent and had intended to win him over. As the Princess of Wei, I had followed Zhao Jing and met him once. He wore an official robe of deep red, striking in clarity and brilliance, yet his presence was stern and commanding, like snow atop Mount Gaia, daring no one to meet his gaze. Zhao Jing summoned him. He cited official duties, declining coldly, leaving Zhao Jing displeased. The second time, during the Yellow River flood, he went with Zhao Jing to aid the people. Zhao Jing went to win the hearts of the populace. I sold my jewelry, wore plain clothes with no hairpins or rings, and stood by the roadside, distributing porridge. The rain had stopped, and the sun blazed fiercely. I saw the hardships of the people, my heart suspended, neither rising nor falling, and I stood in the sun all day. That evening, Zhao Jing saw how exhausted I was and tenderly held me, telling me not to take things so seriously. In the following days, I still went. Lu Chenyuan was there as well. No one expected that this man from the capital, flawless as jade, a figure destined for high halls, would be in the mud, personally setting water gauges and reinforcing levees, indifferent to the dirt on his robes. I admired him and watched him for a long while. He seemed burned by the gaze, his back stiff, unable to look back. Later, Zhao Jing tried again to win him over, only to learn that he had aligned with Prince Qi. Prince Qi was benevolent, yet he was Zhao Jing's greatest political rival. The last time Prince Qi was defeated and killed, Zhao Jing ascended the throne, and Lu Chenyuan became a prisoner. I went to the imperial prison to persuade him on Zhao Jing's behalf. Zhao Jing valued talent. If Lu Chenyuan was willing to abandon his former lord and follow Zhao Jing, it could become a celebrated story. Prominent positions and wealth would follow. The prison was cold and damp. I wrapped myself in a cloak. He wore thin clothes, sitting in a corner, his messy hair covering his eyes, his complexion pale, all traces of former elegance gone. He lifted his head, calm and composed, as if ready to face death. Our eyes met. I wanted to speak, then stopped, ultimately not urging him. I merely had someone tidy the place and bring him extra clothing. I advised Zhao Jing to spare his life and exile him from the capital, a ruler showing mercy to a man of integrity. Zhao Jing agreed, banishing Lu Chenyuan 1,000 miles away. After that, until I died, we never saw each other again. 11. The man approached slowly. I noticed he carried a scholar's case, dusty and worn. His eyelashes and eyebrows seemed misted, giving his eyes a hint of moisture. His features were not, as in my past life, softened, youthful. I knew Lu Chenyuan came from a humble background. I had not expected. Ruined temple, scholar, exam in progress. It all unfolded as the storybook said. In those tales, the young lady would give the poor scholar silver, even pledging herself. And me? Perhaps I would give him money, but only to keep him silent, forbidding mention of today's events. My palms were sweaty. I steadied the veil and reached out a hand. Lu Chenyuan spoke. I've checked. There's no one nearby. This matter, I won't speak of it either. His voice was like a gust of wind, passing through the forest, shaking dew from the leaves. I froze, uncertain, torn between trust and doubt. I could believe him, his words would not change. Yet even if I didn't, there was no alternative. Handling the commoner consort Chun had been simple. But Lu Chenyuan, now a man of rank, could not be killed without inviting disaster. So I withdrew my hand and whispered, "Thank you." The white veil of the screen was like thick fog. I couldn't see his expression clearly, though he seemed to smile faintly. This matter, like falling petals, drifted away, leaving no trace, known only to the three of us. March, the spring imperial exams. Mother fretted over my unresolved marriage, joking repeatedly that my father should help me choose a husband. The empress was equally anxious. She selected another group of women. But this time, Zhao Jing had requirements. No one seemed good enough. All somehow lacking. He had dreamt of a young lady, born to a noble family, gentle and kind, speaking softly, treating servants with courtesy. They would face life together, respect each other in harmony. In his dream, spring rain fell like silk, willow branches stretching endlessly. Yet he could never clearly see her face. Upon waking, he was filled with longing. There were many gentle and virtuous noble ladies. But who could guarantee that one chosen could share his life, never leaving or forsaking him? Mother gazed at me worriedly, brushing my hair. Born of a noble family, gentle and kind, I always feel the Prince of Wei still thinks of you. That was not a good thing. I shook my head, hiding my blood-stained hands in my sleeves, my fingers icy and impossible to warm. What kindness do I have? I murmured. I had just killed a person. And in the future, I would kill again.
12.
The day the exam results were announced arrived. I sat in a tea house, arm in arm with Li Shuanghua, watching the new top scholar parade through the streets. She insisted I watch, saying it would be a treat for the eyes. I've heard this year's champion is even more handsome than the third-place scholar, she said. I drifted into thought. Before becoming the Princess of Wei, I had never cared about politics. Years had passed, and without entanglement I barely remembered even the top 3 scholars. Spring breeze brushed my face, and apricot blossoms drifted down. I smoothed my hair with my fingers and looked down and froze. Lu Chenyuan rode a white horse, a floral ornament tucked in his hat. Even in this moment of triumph, he remained calm, his face steady and unhurried. Apricot petals had settled across his shoulders. The one that had brushed against my temple moments ago twirled as I moved, falling toward the ground. He suddenly raised his hand, catching it with his palm. It felt as if he sensed something. Our eyes met. It was as though years had passed, and yet we did not know which night this was. I only hurried downstairs when Xueyun called me, saying my father wished to see me. This year, my father was in charge of the palace examinations. Being close to the river gave him an advantage, yet he still had to contend with others for some time, nearly clashing with other officials, to finally capture the proper and restrained top scholar. My father proudly announced his achievement to me. He said the champion was not eloquent and dared not speak to me, but, encouraged by him, he would personally come to propose. I was taken aback. Indeed, Lu Chenyuan was not fluent in speech. His words were always measured and precise in writing. Dare not speak to me? I recalled that many said Lu Chenyuan had the looks of a nobleman, yet the temperament of a man unyielding and upright. Yet he alone avoided my gaze, every time flustered, as if I were a ferocious beast. The Qiongling banquet had yet to begin. Lu Chenyuan had dismounted, standing to the side, tall and upright, his bearing graceful and refined. His fingertips trembled slightly, the apricot blossom in his hand quivering. He lowered his thin eyelids, his earlobes flushed like the floral ornament, and spoke with visible nervousness. I, Lu, am humble. Only with sincerity and my life do I present myself before second Miss Pei. I could not imagine the courage it took to say that. I knew he was a man of impeccable character. I had seen him petition for the people. I had seen him counsel the emperor with frankness. Every side I had seen of him was admirable. I lightly touched my skirt. Marriage seemed inevitable. If it were him, it seemed all right. I lifted my eyes and smiled faintly.
Very well.
My father grinned, nudging his colleagues. Disperse, disperse. The top scholar is to become my daughter's husband. No need to wait any longer. The clatter of hooves sounded. In an instant, the crowd fell silent. Everyone turned, bowing to the Prince of Wei. I followed suit. But he swung off his horse and strode directly toward me, his shadow falling across me like a heavy cloud. He asked coldly, Pei Youning, what did you promise him? Today, the Prince of Wei was merely a guest at the banquet. Yet here he stood, blocking everyone's way, his face stormy, as if a mountain tempest was about to break. I did not fear him. With all the ministers present and the emperor in attendance, what could he do in the public eye? I lifted my head and answered formally. I have agreed to the marriage with the champion. A simple statement. Yet like a stone thrown into water, it sent waves crashing across his expression. He froze, rigid as though struck by lightning. Panic and confusion mingled in his eyes. Lu Chenyuan's gaze settled on him, frost seeming to form between his brows. I lowered my head. The banquet was about to start. I could not enter, so I excused myself and left first. The Qiongling banquet was lively. According to my father, the top scholar was young and accomplished. The emperor, delighted, decreed that the marriage be granted at the banquet. The Prince of Wei was absent-minded. For some unknown reason, he even dropped and broke a wine cup. 13. The marriage between Lu Chenyuan and me was finalized. He sent many gifts, sometimes imperial bestowals, sometimes paintings and calligraphy acquired through contacts. Before entering the Hanlin Academy, the emperor had directly granted him an official post with a salary. The engagement gifts piled up. I often looked at the list in surprise. In my previous life, he had always been alone. Zhao Jing once joked with me. Someone like Lu Chenyuan, if married, who knew what that would be like. His heart was always on his duties. To be his wife would mean loneliness. Now I understood. He did not have great wealth, but he would give everything sincerely. During breaks, I would accompany him on outings. Small bridges, flowing water, floating blossoms. He held the oar, steering the boat. I looked down at him and noticed his writing hand was broad, the joints prominent. No wonder in the past life he had lifted bricks and drawn a bow. He grew slightly uneasy under my gaze. The boat drifted toward the shore. I leaned slightly forward. The wind brushed through the veil. White silk swept across his cheek. His lashes trembled, and he quickly turned his head, adjusting the veil, cheeks burning, unable to look at me again. Youning. It was the first time I heard him call me that. In my past life, when he came to the capital, I was already the future princess. Later I became empress. When the palace sent the decree to the prison, saying the empress had pardoned him, his previously dim eyes gained a flicker of light. He accepted the edict with gratitude, but never addressed me by name. He said, "Actually, that day I stayed outside the temple all along." He had just come of age in Jiangnan, provisions had already been arranged, and he did not need to stay in a ruined temple. He had only happened to pass by when I committed the killing. Lu Chenyuan was a man of integrity. And yet that one time, his only reaction was to stay outside, covering for me. The wind moaned through the temple grounds at night. I cried. He sighed. He said, "The debt has not yet been settled, right?" I felt wronged again, gripping the veil, whispering, "Yes." No need to explain further. He had also been reborn. He said he had not dared to propose, knowing he was unworthy. But having seen me in the previous life, he realized even the most exalted ruler could not make me happy. He could not match me. Reborn, he became the top scholar, gained my father's favor, and dared to speak. He lowered his head, his shadow wavering on the water, light glittering across the surface. Pei Youning looked kindly upon me. The boat rocked gently. After half an hour, we finally reached shore. I placed my hand in Lu Chenyuan's palm. Holding up my skirt, I stepped off the boat, just as the Prince of Wei's guards appeared. He had been waiting there all along, eyes fixed on our joined hands, his face dark and fierce.
14.
Zhao Jing said he remembered everything. He remembered how I had been by his side, not just accumulating influence step by step, but even on the day of palace upheaval, facing life and death together.
He advanced toward me.
"Youning, why are you standing beside someone else?" His hair was unkempt, the chaos of a fast ride leaving him disheveled, and the shadow over him made him look dark and menacing, no longer the refined presence of the past. He spoke to Lu Chenyuan. "Had I known you harbored such thoughts, I would have torn you apart, disregarding Youning's wishes." The last words were heavy, laced with hatred. Lu Chenyuan showed no fear, meeting him with calm detachment. The wind swept across the lake, making his hair ribbon flutter like a sword. "Your Highness, this is no longer like before. Victory or defeat is yet unknown." Reborn, he was no emperor yet. The outcome was uncertain. If the Prince of Qi ascended, the one deserving execution would be Zhao Jing. Zhao Jing's eyes reddened as he stared at me, his face paling. "You feel it too? That I could fail?" The spectators had been dispersed, not daring to glance in our direction. He asked me, "To be my lawful wife, are you not pleased?" Lu Chenyuan's expression darkened instantly, positioning himself between us. Tall and imposing, he stood as a bulwark against Zhao Jing's fury. "Your Highness, do you really need to ask?" At my death, I had been Zhao Jing's wife for 7 years. I had faithfully fulfilled my duties, never crossing him. He thought he had treated me well. I held great authority in the palace. No favored concubine had ever undermined my position as empress. On my deathbed, I had wished him longevity and peace. He promised me a next life. He thought it a weighty promise. But even when he saw my suffering clearly, he had arrogantly ignored it. All those words were mere pretense. I looked at him, petals drifting behind him as the sky dimmed. "I hate you, Zhao Jing, and I wish never to see you again in this life." All I wished was to protect those around me. There was not a shred of sincerity in my words to him. Zhao Jing's expression cracked inch by inch. His face ashen, he staggered backward, barely able to stand. I looked at Lu Chenyuan and smiled gently. "Where to next?" "Seems like the temple, to match our fates." 15. Lu Chenyuan and I had our fates matched and chose an auspicious day. Zhao Jing could do nothing. Now he understood how powerless I had once been. Though I seemed in command, perched atop influence, the emperor still towered above me. Without his approval, nothing could be accomplished. Zhao Jing knelt outside Zichen Hall. A scroll of bamboo was flung, striking his temple. "Absurd! You tried to take my wife in vain. This matter need not be mentioned again. Act like this again, and return to your fiefdom." Harsh words indeed, an unmistakable message that he had no claim to the throne. On my wedding day, Zhao Jing did not attend. The emperor forbade Lu Chenyuan from delivering an invitation. Zhao Jing drank himself into stupor at the grandest tavern in the capital. This time, when he sobered, He saw clearly. No matter what, he himself remained his top priority. He was frustrated. I, meanwhile, celebrated my wedding night. Where Zhao Jing had once been courteous to outsiders but cold to the wives he disliked, Lu Chenyuan, normally stern and reserved, grew bashful and flustered before me. 3 words would turn him red, and often he feared I would find him dull. I had some wine, wrapped an arm around his neck, and drowsily asked, "When did you start liking me?" Lu Chenyuan said, "At first sight." The candlelight was dim, blurring the lines between past and present lives. I teased him proudly. "Lu, you are bold indeed." He swallowed, knowing his previous thoughts amounted to mere desire. He gently grasped my wrist, leaned closer, eyes shining like stars. "Lu can be bolder still. May I?" Meanwhile, Zhao Jing had sobered and returned to state affairs. Based on memories of the previous life, he should have achieved great things. Every plan had been meticulously arranged. Even one deviation would ruin everything. Our rebirth had inadvertently disrupted the order of fate. Disasters that had once come in the previous life did not arrive as expected. Floods struck differently. The number of displaced people changed. Zhao Jing, ambitious, was caught off guard, failing to become the savior. But the Prince of Qi succeeded. He was kind-hearted, with the welfare of the people at heart. I followed Lu Chenyuan on journeys to aid the people. I distributed porridge, helped to the clinics, he rolled up his sleeves, and did the labor no one else wanted. I remembered the first time I saw him. I had not believed it. An esteemed scholar, famous for looks, yet so upright and diligent. This time, I stood with him in murky waters. What hems did not matter. The villagers praised us, as if Pei Youning and Lu Chenyuan were fated to be together. I blinked, gradually realizing. This is what I truly wanted, shared triumphs and hardships.
16.
Lu Chenyuan rose to office, donning the crimson official robe again. He was a trusted aide of the Prince of Qi, even more composed and intelligent than before, handling everything with care. Yet the palace remained unstable. The emperor fell gravely ill, sooner than in the past life. And just as before, he passed suddenly, leaving no will, no parting words. The Prince of Qi had long prepared. Zhao Jing, too, made his moves. After half a day of fighting, Zhao Jing fled. Though at a disadvantage, he had once been emperor and knew the palace layout and secret routes only an emperor could. The Prince of Qi feared he might return if not eliminated. I said, "I know where the Prince of Wei will flee." The Prince of Qi glanced at me, surprised, then at Lu Chenyuan. Lu Chenyuan's expression remained calm. He said, "I will take people to protect you." I found Zhao Jing. Long absent, he was anxious, worn, his face haggard. His silver armor stained with blood, yet he was not defeated. His inner guards were dead, but outside forces awaited. He could still survive. I spoke gently. "Zhao Jing, I can take you away." A simple sentence. The moonlight fell perfectly, illuminating my hair and skirts, just as it had when I once stood by his side. "I do not want you to die." He looked up, disheveled, eyes brimming with tears, joy, surprise, and a trace of being moved. He had once given me hope in the same way. He said the concubine was at my disposal. Yet he had once shot an arrow into my hand, cutting off my last chance to resist. I wanted to cry and laugh at once, yet in his eyes, it seemed I still loved him, still tangled with him. After all, we were married for 7 years. After all, he believed he could make me devoted. Zhao Jing stood. "I will go with you. If we can strike back. The harem is empty. I need only you." Suppressing my inner mockery, I lifted my skirts and fled with him down a deserted path. But my strength waned, and I fell behind. I touched the knife in my sleeve, panting. "Zhao Jing, I can't run anymore." He turned to pull me, but saw a blade pierce his chest. I drew my knife, expressionless, and struck again. He stared, disbelieving, gasping through his throat. I smiled. Feel it? Betrayal. He had no strength to resist, though still breathing, so I had the rare leisure to speak. The one you loved most, the concubine, is dead. I killed her long ago. I only regret you died untimely, unable to reunite with her properly. He stretched out a hand, trying to grasp my skirt, voice faint, almost inaudible. He said, Youning, since your death, I have also had her executed, making her pay for you. I did not live to that moment. I did not know if he spoke truth or lies. Nor could I ponder whether the concubine had been his true love or just a recent fancy. All I remembered. I had been good to him, giving everything. He had been cruel to me, as cruel as an enemy. I withdrew my gaze coldly, striking him again. The hidden guards around us rose. I acted with caution. Even if he realized my intent, it would be futile. The difference between dying by my hand or by stray arrows was meaningless. I held the knife, voice clear. I have executed the traitor. Lu Chenyuan strode forward, enveloping me in his arms. He wiped the cold sweat from my brow, steadied my trembling body. Leaning close, forehead against mine, he sighed. Youning. No more words, only care, only tenderness, repeated again and again. From a truly gentle, kind-hearted man, to now, we had endured too much. 17. This was the first spring I experienced after rebirth. The new emperor ascended, granting amnesty and reducing taxes. Spring rain revived the earth. I earned merit under the new dynasty and was titled a princess. Seeing my exhaustion, the new emperor allowed Lu Chenyuan a month's leave to accompany me on leisurely travels. The painted boat drifted south along the river, rain occasionally falling. I wore only a straw raincoat, standing at the bow, letting the drops fall into my hands. He constantly watched my expression, fearing the scenery might stir old memories. I smiled freely. It's nothing now. After all, the wind and rain sweep across the rivers, and the tides rise and fall. The end. Sometimes, after all the blood, betrayals, and palace storms, peace isn't in power. It's in holding the right hand as the spring wind drifts by.